Hello. So, it's currently 8 in the morning. And obviously, I'm home alone. Because hindi ko magagawa tong video na to if, ayan, may manok. If may tao sa bahay namin. But currently, I'm just eating a little breakfast-ish snacks. Uminom ako ng Chucky. It's been a long time since gumawa ako ng video na I'm just gonna be at my house talking to the internet. But for today, I've been wanting to do this video for like years. I mean, no one really cares, but like iniisip kong gawin kasi this is such a huge part of who I am, and I just wanted to share it to the internet and see if future me would look at this video and would think the same. But, well, today I'm gonna be talking about 4 of my favorite books that I've ever read in my life. So, for context lang, I've started reading since I was a child. I've read a lot of Diary of the Wimpy Kid books and the Dork Diaries. I would never really had to choose between the two, because like I liked both of each book's individuality and both of the books' concepts. And even though I read a lot as a child, I never really got to practice that when I was growing up as a teenager. Well, most of it. But when the pandemic happened, you really don't have anything to do. And for me, I chose to read again. And because of that, I developed a hobby that I would be probably bringing to my grave. And I think I like that. Even though it's a really, really expensive hobby, I really like I really love reading, and I don't know if I'll be able to stop it, because even if I'm in a book slump, it doesn't get removed from my personality, or from me personally. So if may maririnig kayong mga manok sa background, hayaan nyo na. Kasi wala na tayong magagawa dyan. That's Mother Nature at its core. Hindi natin mapipigilan yan. But anyways, hello. I'm Kay. I'm 19 years old. And I just have a lot of hobbies. And reading books is just one of them. For context, puro for context, kasi hindi niyo naman kasi alam ko ano yung buhay ko. So, magbibigay talaga ako ng context. These books I've read at a very specific time in my life, so that's why it had such an impact on me. Kasi I wouldn't have read, or I wouldn't have made these books my favorite books if I hadn't had a specific feeling during that period of my life. Di ko sinasabi na it relates to that time of my life. It's just that kaya ko siya nagiging favorite book kasi I read it at a time when my memories are working. Kasi I think I have a short-term memory loss. Feeling ko talaga. Kasi I read a lot of books. I've read a lot of books, pero I'm gonna be honest, most of them I forget. I just remember them every time like may makikita akong contents about it, and then yes, oh my god, nare-remember ko tong book na to. I remember reading it when I was like at this point of my life. So, eto namang apat na to, I just can't forget about them kahit na anong gawin ko. Parang iniisip ko pa din sila kahit na ang tagal ko na sila nabasa. And kapag naiisip ko sila, para akong naiiyak ganun, or like parang emotional ako. I can't do anything about it. I'm a really emotional person. So I guess that's why I have these books as my favorites, kasi they had such an impact on my emotional Emotional in the emotional category kasi I'm just a really emotional person. I feel things deeply, and these books made me think and feel deeply. So let's just cut to the chase and get started on my four of my favorite books I've read in my life. So the first book I'll be talking about, nabasa ko to noong 2022, and these are like this is like one of the first books that I really read and understood, because during the pandemic I was just reading for fun. I've only read like romance books and just had fun with it. But this book really made me understand who I am, because hello, if hindi nyo nakikita, bading po ako. And I had a really hard time accepting that uh, that I'm gay for most of my life. And reading this book during 2022, during 2022, I had the time to finally figure out who I want to be, who I want to love. And even though this book is really kind of sad and it doesn't really romanticize the queerness of it all, it did kind of help me understand who I am. So the first book I'll be sharing or telling you guys is We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. The story of this book revolves around Henry Denton, and Henry Denton is basically what you see in the American media, the queer, low key, petite type kind of gay. And he has I don't want to freaking sugarcoat it. He has depression, man. He has the worst kind of life possible if you think about it. And Henry lives in a household with a dysfunctional family. And he himself, even though he struggles with himself, he tries to uphold, or he tries to build the family back together. And he kind of struggles with that because he has a older brother who is a coward, who is the worst kind of person possible you could think of. And he is slowly losing his grandmother to the Alzheimer's disease. And so even though there is a lot of circumstances that could make him want to give up, he just tries to uh, he just tries to go through all these struggles and try to find meaning in life. Until one night when he was 13, the aliens. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. It's a little sci fi ish a book. The aliens decided to abduct him and give him a choice to either save the earth or let everyone die. But the catch is, they only gave him 144 days to make up his mind. Another thing is, he doesn't know why the aliens offered him this decision, and he doesn't even know the reasons why these aliens in the first place would decide to end Earth. And so that's a dilemma that was going on his head at 13. And he thinks that maybe if the world will end, then everything will have to end also. His struggling will end, and he gets an easy way out. Another thing is, he's 13. He wouldn't really know if life would get better in the future if he won't live. So that's why he's in this dilemma whether to finally end everything or save everyone and figure things out in the future. And even though that might be hard, Henry still has this thought at the back of his head, even though he has crippling depression. But then, so Henry has this dilemma of thinking if the world is worth saving. So I kind of understand that, because even if I would be given that choice, may isip ko talaga yun. Like, the world is as bad as it gets. Ba't ko isa-save yung mga tao sa paligid ko? But then he's 13. And if ako man yung nandun and I'm 13, I would be thinking that way too. Kasi teenagers are the most vulnerable during the adolescent phases. They are they think of the worst possible outcomes that could get, because they don't know anything. We don't know anything when we're like 13. So, if ako nga si Henry, may isip ko din yun. So, eto si Henry, he meets a guy. Okay, so he meets a guy named Diego. He's this artist, and so he meets a guy named Diego. Eto si Diego, he makes Henry think of everything. Diego is a guy who thinks so profoundly. Yung marami siyang thoughts about everything. Marami siyang iniisip about the universe, the concept of everything, theories, and everything. So, parang ang nangyayari is, napapaisip niya si Henry ng mga bagay na hindi niya naiisip before. Kasi nga, 13 lang siya, ba't niya naman maiisip yung mga ganun? Eto si Diego, he's a little older than Henry, and even though he's not that mature, he thinks of the world so nicely. Parang naiisip niya may hope talaga sa world. And knowing Henry has the decision to end Earth or not, parang nagkaka-moral dilemma din talaga si Henry sa loob ng utak niya. And isa pa, kailangan niya ding i-save yung sarili niya before na i-save yung mga tao sa paligid niya. And he hasn't really fully accepted that he's gay. Kasi nga, nabubuli siya doon, and parang nahihirapan siyang tanggapin yun. Kasi alam niyo, if tatanggapin niya yun, he's also going to commit or accept the fact that all his life he will be discriminated by people that thinks of queer people as a disturbance to this world. Happy Pride, but everybody. So, the story itself really captured the thoughts in my head when I was, I think, 14 years old, 15 years old. And I think it made me really understand that the world sometimes doesn't really revolve around you, even though you have the choice to. Kasi most of the time as teenagers, we think that the world really just wants to gun out. Sometimes when we're like 13 years old, we think the world will end. The world will end at a very small mistake, at the biggest mistakes. But that's the thing. In our life, we make different decisions, and there are so many different consequences to our decisions, and most of the times these decisions are mistakes. So reading this book made me really understand that if I were to be given a choice, I would pick the one I think matters the most, not because it's morally good, not because it's the right thing to do. I would pick the one that matters to me, because even that in itself is an important way to think of yourself first in a world where everyone just discards you. And at 13, when you have angsty feelings, you get these hazy thoughts, and this book really made me feel seen, because like even the queerness acceptance fact that sometimes you don't have to force yourself into becoming who you aren't. Even the book in itself has this concept of queerness, and accepting that it's not an illness, and accepting that even though you are queer, the world doesn't stop, and the world doesn't end on having these different problems aside from being queer. And sometimes being free is being queer. This book really doesn't really have a specific or obvious fact of it being a queer book, but it does its job well on showing the different struggles of a queer teenager, and especially with someone with depression. And I think that really made me feel seen. And that's why sabi ko kanina, this book was my favorite at a specific period of my life. And even though I'm not in the period of my life now, I brought it with me because it matters. And that's because I think of this book constantly, like once in a year, I think. So, ayun, this is one of my favorite books, We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. Okay, so moving on to the second book. I'll try to make it quick kasi ang dami kong nasasabi talaga. The second book that I'll be showing, another favorite of mine, it's Welcome to the Yanam, I don't know how to say this, Yanam Dong Bookshop. So this book, my mom actually brought it to me, and that's kind of fun to think of. And this book is actually a Korean book, a Korean literary fiction book, and it's translated into English. I read this book during a time where it's actually famous. It's actually famous on TikTok. And so I read this book and I tried to see what the hype is all about because I have this tendency to sometimes make different opinions prove itself wrong, and I tried to just do that because I'm quirky. I'm quirky like that. But then reading this book actually made me feel so comforted. Actually made me feel so understood because the book itself is about this woman in her 30s who decided to actually end every one of her jobs, and a woman who doesn't have a job is actually still a sensitive topic in this society, and because of that she has this problem that's going on in her head, that she has to prove something because she isn't married, because she just ended a relationship, a long-term relationship with her boyfriend who she thinks would propose to her, but she didn't really want to get tied to to a marriage or a relationship, and so she decided to open a bookshop. What could go wrong? Okay, so now we're at the book that I'm kind of excited to talk about. But yeah, whatever. I'm gonna just go through it. My most favorite book ever. I could never have read a book that's this good. That it's still undefeated to this day. It's still at the top of the pyramid. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So If We Were Villains is about a story that is so messed up in a way, but it's so beautiful. It's just so good. So the story talks about these elite students that studies in a Shakespearean school, in a Shakespearean academy that runs on the books of Shakespeare and his intellectualities and all that, and of course theater. And so the book revolves around Oliver Marks, who is now in the present is serving a 10-year prison imprisonment of a crime that he did at the school. So Oliver Marks then talks to this officer and reminisces about his life at the school. And so he met this detective that really wanted to know what happened to this school and what happened as to why Oliver served this 10-year imprisonment. So this book really is just a tragedy, in a sense that it's a tragedy that's filled with beautiful stories, beautiful memories. When Oliver talks to this detective about what really happened, the readers found out that Oliver is actually part of a 7-person friend group that went through a lot. These friend group really went through a lot, and they're all theater kids. They're all theater actors, and I guess that's also what made me drawn into it because I love theater. I love theater. And I haven't really read a Shakespearean book because some of it is really hard to comprehend. And I just know it's beautiful if I get to understand it, even though I probably wouldn't, and I hope I will in the future, because like that's my dream, to understand the English, the pre-English, without struggling. It's really just like that when it comes to this book. And I remember the story really made me have a hard time understanding as to what is happening. And I love a good book like that. I love when a book makes me think of what's happening, makes me think of different characters in a different time. Because, like, there's a specific scene where you could see a character doing this thing, and you would know that another character is having a story of its own in the background that we don't really see yet, and it really makes you feel close to the characters that it's so hard to find a gap hole. Sticky. I don't even know if I could pick a line. Actually, I can. I underlined it with like red. Okay, so this is my favorite line in the book that I actually quote this most of the time because I just remember it. So the line goes like, "For someone who loved words as much as I did, it was amazing how often they failed me." And that perfectly sums up this book. There was just so many left unsaid, but then, even though there were a lot of unsaid words, the narrative of the story takes you to a deeper sense of understanding. And I think that's why it's a tragedy, because only we as readers gets to understand that. And the characters in the book struggles with it. Struggles with these different dilemmas, problems, and that we don't get to share that with them, and that makes me feel so maternal towards even the main character. Because I just feel things so deeply, guys. I can't say anything but just that. I think I said a few words about that quote in here. Oh my god, I lost it immediately. Damn it. Okay, so this is what I wrote about it, about the quote in the book. As someone who lives in his life occupied and surrounded with words, it's very shocking how very often it is that words are the reasons I sometimes fail in life. Crazy. But at the same time, it's also the only thing that keeps me motivated, and that's all true. Even though words keep me at a very hard point in my life, it makes me not wanna say things, because sometimes really word does hold meaning. It holds such weight. It still is the most motivated reason that I want to speak about everything in my life, and even though it sometimes hurt people, words just creates a deeper sense of understanding and meaning that even though it fails me, I still use it to speak up. And I think I want to make a separate video about this book. I think I won't, but I think I will. Because I just have so much to say about this book. And those words I said about this are just the tip of the iceberg. I have so much to say about this, but I don't want to lengthen this video too much because I'm really gonna have a hard time editing. And also because I think I don't have the right thoughts for it right now. I haven't really prepared for it. So that's why I think I'm gonna make a specific video, a different video about this one. But if I haven't said it yet, yes, this is my most favorite book of all time. So the last book that I will be sharing, a favorite of mine that's recently became a favorite. I've read this like last year November. Yes, I read this last year November, and that's like the quickest book. This is like the quickest book I've ever read. I finished it in like 1.5 day, cause like it was just that good. So this next book is actually not my introduction to this author, but it's a book that made me love this author further. So this book, when I was reading it, I had a hard time getting into it because like the words or the writing style, I was still getting used to it. But by the time that I finally had a flow state while reading it, I loved the writing style even more. So this book, it's Babel by R.F. Kuang. It's just perfect. I think I rated this like 5 star on my Fable account at the time. So this book is all about Robin Swift, who at the time is an orphan because his mother died of cholera, and he is brought into London by this very mysterious professor that works in the Oxford University's most prestigious Royal Institute of Translation, which is also known as Babel or Babel. So Babel is basically known at this book in this book as this world center for translation and more importantly magic. Um, in this book we can also see like a hint of fantasy-ish. Okay, so when Robin was brought to study in the university or in Babel, he pursues a life worth living, basically, and he wants to repay what this professor has shown him or what his professor gave him. He wants to give back to the professor because with the professor gave him a life that helped him basically live, and he wants to pay back as like a gratitude sense in a gratitude sense of way. But then when Robin finally got to study in Babel, he finds out that the world is bigger than studying in a prestigious university because he grew up as a child who lived in poverty most of his life. And when he got to study at Oxford, of course, it is a privilege, but it doesn't mean that he lost his sense of humanness. He became more aware of the world's problem. He became more aware of the institution's unfair treatment to people of color, and even people like him who is an Asian and he studies in the university which is filled with British students or white students. And this book, it was just so amazing. At the time I was reading it, I was like, damn, I've never read a book that handles different social issues in the same time, but the social issues that gets talked in this book, it wasn't like on the nose. It was written so profoundly. It was written with intentionality, with study and understanding of the issue. And I love when books do that because books or reading in itself is very political. It's so affected by the socio-economic circumstances in our world, and the book perfectly portrays that, or perfectly shows that political narrative in a way that it's not performative. It's just so filled with intentionality and filled of specificity, and it talked about politics in a way that makes the reader understand that this is happening right now also in our real world. And it just used politics in a way that readers can get to understand further what's wrong with our world and why it matters to actually want to have a will to change the different things in our world that doesn't help us or help the community that doesn't get served as much as the privileged. And so that's why Robin, the main character, had this dilemma of paying back to his master or his professor by being the student that he didn't want to become, by being the student that loses all sense of understanding in a society that still gets undermined by the people in power, and or being someone who rebels against it and the fights against the system that doesn't help him at all, that fights against the system that doesn't create a safe place for students like him, or students that doesn't really have much opportunities as those privileged or as the white people does have. So it's such a good way of telling a truth in a fiction book, or telling the violence that the world still happen that the world still has today, especially in systems that doesn't favor those of the poor or those of the people in the communities that are underprivileged. And so that's why I really love this book, because it's just so real. It was just so realistic in a sense that it makes you understand that there's so much problem in the world to think of being the richest person alive, or thinking of being or thinking of power. In its greater sense, it was just so phenomenal. I understood why R.F. Kuang wrote it. I understood why the writer wants to show this story to the world. It was such a tragedy, but it was such a good sense of writing a tragedy that matters. So that was it. That's a lot of words for today. I never yap this much during the mornings, because sometimes it drains me. But I really just wanted to talk about my four favorite books in a time where I have the house to myself, where my thoughts are clear. And I don't know if you've noticed, but this video is so unprepared. I have no notes. I have no anything. It's actually so nice that I got to talk about my favorite books, because I really don't do that most of the time. 'Cause no one really asks. Who freaking asks for a favorite book in this society? But then it's actually so nice to actually do it now, because I don't think I'll ever have an opportunity again to ever talk about my favorite books. And if I will, it's probably just going to be on my channel in a YouTube video. So it's such a nice way of talking about a part of myself that I hold so deeply, I hold so dearly, because books really just matters to me. It's a huge part of who I am, and I like sharing it to the world, that reading matters, and reading is such a way to open your eyes into different social cultures, social issues, different languages, different stories, because stories are so important. It's so important in understanding the human life and the human perspective. And I hope more people gets to read. I hope more people understands that reading is so important. And even though we don't read, I hope we can read and pick up a book at a time of our life that matters the most, because books can give you that impact, and I hope more people know that. And I'm sorry for the constant kakadoodle-doos in the background, because like I know there is a lot. I know you can hear it, but I think it's okay. Whatever, it's my video. But that's it, I think, and I hope I get to talk about more of my favorite books in the future in my channel. So you can just go here, scroll, and see if I've uploaded a video. I might not, but who cares? This is my channel. So that's it. Bye bye.